They buried this rhythm for a reason, not because it was useless, but because it was too effective, too disruptive to systems that depend on your exhaustion, your confusion, your fractured attention. What I'm about to reveal to you is known as Smai Tawi rhythms, an ancient Egyptian breathing pattern whispered through temple walls, designed not just to calm the mind, but to seize control of something far more dangerous, your biological clock. And here's the part they don't want you to realize: your sense of time, your energy cycles, your clarity of thought. They are not broken by accident. You have been slowly pulled out of sync, disconnected from your natural rhythm, and the consequences are already shaping your decisions, your emotions, your entire life. You wake up tired even after sleep. You feel sharp for a moment, then fog consumes you. Your focus fractures, your mood shifts without warning. You blame stress, diet, maybe even age. But what if I told you the real issue is deeper, hidden at the level of your internal timing system, the same system that ancient practitioners learned to control with precision? They understood something modern science is only now confirming. Your brain is not just a processor, it is a clock, a living oscillator that depends on rhythm to function. Break the rhythm and everything collapses: memory, clarity, emotional stability. I have spent years studying both suppressed rituals and the latest neurological research, and the pattern is undeniable. When your internal rhythm is hijacked, you become predictable, manageable, easier to control. But when you reclaim it, something shifts. Your mind sharpens, your perception deepens. You begin to operate on a different frequency entirely. The Smai Tawi rhythms were not just a practice, they were a weapon against chaos, a tool to realign human consciousness with the natural cycles of light, breath, and awareness. So ask yourself this: if such a method exists, one that can restore clarity, stabilize your emotions, and synchronize your mind with precision, why have you never been taught it? And more importantly, are you ready to step outside the rhythm they designed for you and reclaim your own? You think you're just tired. You think it's normal to feel slow in the morning, wired at night, distracted in the middle of the day, emotionally unstable for no clear reason. But this is not normal. This is a disrupted system, a biological clock that has been pushed out of alignment so gradually you stop noticing the damage. Your body was designed to follow a precise rhythm, a sequence of hormonal signals, neural pulses, and metabolic cycles that rise and fall with light, darkness, and breath. Instead, you are living in a constant state of temporal confusion, and the consequences are more severe than you've been told. Look closely at your day. Artificial light floods your eyes long after sunset, suppressing melatonin, the very signal that tells your brain it's time to repair and reset. Cortisol, the hormone meant to peak in the morning, spikes at the wrong hours, keeping you alert when you should be resting and draining you when you need to perform. Your nervous system is trapped in a loop, oscillating chaotically instead of rhythmically. And here's the dangerous part: when this rhythm breaks, your brain loses its timing precision. Thoughts become scattered. Focus becomes fragile. Emotional responses become exaggerated or numb. You are no longer operating with clarity. You are reacting, drifting, compensating. Ancient practitioners of Smai Tawi recognize this as a state of internal disorder, a kind of invisible fragmentation. They believe that when your internal clock falls out of sync, your perception of reality itself becomes distorted. Modern neuroscience now echoes this in a different language, pointing to circadian misalignment as a root cause of cognitive decline, mood instability, and even long-term neurological damage. But instead of correcting the rhythm, the modern world accelerates the disruption. Notifications, irregular schedules, constant stimulation, each one pulling you further away from your natural timing. So understand this clearly. The problem is not your willpower, not your intelligence, not your discipline. The problem is that your internal rhythm has been hijacked. And until you restore it, every attempt to improve your focus, your energy, your clarity will feel like pushing against an invisible force. The question is no longer whether you are affected. The question is how long you will remain in this state before you decide to break the cycle. Now we move into the layer they rarely explain clearly: Because once you see the mechanism, the illusion breaks. Your body is not simply reacting to the world, it is constantly predicting time through an internal system known in modern circadian rhythm science as a synchronized network of oscillators, with the brain acting as the master clock. At the center of this system sits a delicate balance between melatonin and cortisol, two chemical signals that rise and fall like tides, dictating when you feel alert, when you feel calm, and when your mind enters deep clarity or collapses into fog. But here is the part that was hidden in plain sight. This system does not only respond to light, it responds to rhythm, specifically the rhythm of your breath. The Smai Tawi practitioners understood that breath is not just oxygen exchange, it is a timing signal, a metronome that can either stabilize or destabilize your neural patterns. Every inhale and exhale sends signals through the vagus nerve, the longest cranial nerve in your body, directly influencing heart rate, emotional regulation, and brainwave states. When your breathing is chaotic, your signals are chaotic. But when your breathing follows a precise rhythm, something extraordinary happens. Your nervous system begins to entrain, meaning it locks into that rhythm, aligning heartbeats, neural firing, and hormonal release into a synchronized pattern. Think of it like an orchestra that has lost its conductor. Each instrument plays, but not together, creating noise instead of harmony. Smai Tawi rhythms reintroduce the conductor. Through controlled breathing patterns, you begin to shift your brain into slower, more coherent states, often associated with theta waves and alpha waves. These are not mystical ideas. They are measurable states where creativity sharpens, stress dissolves, and perception becomes clearer. And here is where it becomes almost unsettling. When this synchronization occurs, your internal clock starts to correct itself. Sleep becomes deeper, wakefulness becomes sharper, emotional reactions stabilize. It is as if your entire system remembers how it was originally designed to function. The ancients called this returning to harmony. Modern science calls it neural entrainment and autonomic regulation. Different words, same reality. So understand what you are dealing with. This is not just breathing. This is direct access to the timing system of your brain, the very mechanism that determines how clearly you think, how deeply you rest, and how effectively you act. And once you realize that, the next question becomes unavoidable. If rhythm can repair your system, what happens when you apply it with precision? Now you are ready for the part most people never reach, because this is where theory becomes control and control becomes transformation. The Smai Tawi rhythms are not casual breathing exercises you perform absent-mindedly. They are a precise protocol and every detail matters. If you rush it, you get nothing. If you distort the rhythm, you destabilize the system further. But if you execute it correctly, you begin to override the chaos that has been conditioning your biology for years. So listen carefully, because this is where you either take control or you remain trapped. You begin at a critical moment, either at sunrise or just before sleep, when your internal clock is most sensitive to recalibration. Sit upright, spine aligned, not rigid but alert, as if your body itself is an antenna receiving a signal. Your tongue rests lightly against the roof of your mouth, sealing the circuit they once described as the inner current. Your eyes remain half closed or gently focused downward, reducing external interference. Now the breath begins, and this is where precision becomes everything. You inhale slowly through the nose for a count of 4, not shallow, not forced, but deep enough to expand the lower abdomen first, then the ribs, then the chest. You hold for a count of 2, just enough to create a subtle pressure, a signal to your nervous system. Then you exhale for a count of 6, longer than the inhale, controlled, steady, as if you are releasing tension, layer by layer. But here is the hidden adjustment most people miss. The rhythm is not just 4-2-6, it is the consistency of that rhythm repeated without deviation for cycles of at least 12 breaths. Around the 6th or 7th cycle, you may feel a shift, a slight slowing of thoughts, a soft heaviness in the body, or an unusual clarity emerging behind your eyes. That is not imagination. That is your nervous system beginning to entrain. If you lose the rhythm, you break the effect. If your mind wanders, you pull yourself back immediately because attention is the amplifier of this process. There is one more layer rarely mentioned. As you breathe, you synchronize your awareness with the rhythm itself, almost as if you are listening to an internal pulse. You are not just breathing, you are aligning. The inhale becomes a signal of activation, the hold a moment of integration, the exhale a command to release and stabilize. Over time, this pattern begins to override the irregular signals your body has been conditioned to follow. Do not underestimate how subtle this feels at first. This is not explosive. It is surgical, quiet, precise, and that is exactly why it is so powerful, because what you are doing here is not forcing. You are reintroducing order into a system that has forgotten its own rhythm. Now you want results, not theory, not promises, but measurable change. And this is where most people either become believers or walk away, because the timeline of Smai Tawi rhythms is both subtle and undeniable. Within the first session, if you executed the rhythm with precision, you will notice something almost immediate. Your thoughts begin to slow, not in a dull way, but in a controlled, deliberate manner. The mental noise that usually runs in the background starts to fade, replaced by a clearer, more stable awareness. This is the first signal that your nervous system is shifting out of chaos and into synchronization. Your heart rate may drop slightly, your breath becomes naturally deeper, and there is a quiet sense of control that was not there before. Within the first 24 hours, especially if you practice at both sunrise and night, your sleep begins to change. You fall asleep faster, but more importantly, you enter deeper phases of rest. You wake up with a different quality of awareness, not necessarily full of energy yet, but more aligned, more stable. This is the early stage of circadian correction, where your internal clock starts to recalibrate itself. Your body is beginning to remember the rhythm it was designed to follow. After 3 to 5 days, the shift becomes more obvious. Your focus sharpens in ways that are difficult to ignore. Tasks that once felt scattered now flow with more continuity. Emotional reactions begin to stabilize. You are less reactive, less impulsive, and more deliberate in your responses. This is where many people realize that what they thought was personality was actually dysregulation. Your brain is no longer firing randomly. It is operating with timing, with structure. By the second week, the transformation deepens. Your energy aligns more predictably with the day. You feel alert when you should be alert, calm when you should be calm. The constant internal friction begins to disappear. This is the stage where neural entrainment becomes consistent, where your breathing rhythm has effectively retrained your internal clock. You may even notice subtle enhancements in memory, creativity, and perception, as if your mind is processing information with greater efficiency. And beyond that, if you continue, the changes compound. This is no longer a technique you use. It becomes a state you operate from. Your system is no longer reacting to disruption. It is anchored in rhythm. And once that happens, the difference between who you were and who you are becomes impossible to ignore. Now you stand at a threshold most people never even recognize exists. You have seen the pattern, you understand the mechanism, and you have been given the protocol. So what happens next is no longer about knowledge, it is about decision. Because here is the truth most will avoid. Once you are aware that your state is controlled by rhythm, continuing to live in disorder becomes a choice. A passive one, yes, but still a choice. And the system that thrives on your distraction, your fatigue, your inconsistency, it depends on you making that choice every single day without realizing it. So I will make this direct. You test this for 7 days. No negotiation, no half effort, no excuses. Sunrise and night, you execute the rhythm exactly as instructed. You protect the timing, you maintain the count, you hold your attention like it matters because it does. You will feel resistance not from the technique, but from your own conditioning. Your mind will wander, your body will resist stillness. You will be tempted to rush or skip. That resistance is not random. It is the imprint of a system that has trained you to avoid precision, to avoid control. And this is where the real challenge begins. Because if you push through that resistance, something shifts that cannot easily be reversed. You begin to notice time differently. Hours feel structured instead of chaotic. Your thoughts no longer pull you in every direction. You respond instead of react. And once you experience that level of clarity, returning to your previous state will feel unnatural, almost unbearable. This is why these methods were never widely taught. Not because they don't work, but because they work too well. They make you aware. They make you precise. They make you difficult to influence. So the question is simple, and I want you to answer it honestly. Are you going to continue drifting inside a rhythm that was never designed for your benefit? Or are you going to reclaim the one system that governs everything you think, feel, and do? There is no middle ground here. Either you remain in the loop, repeating the same cycles, or you break it deliberately. You already have what you need. The rhythm is in your control now. The only variable left is whether you will use it. If this ancient rhythm has changed the way you perceive your own internal clock, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the suppressed history and biological truths they tried to hide. Reclaim your rhythm. The next key to your consciousness will be revealed soon.